What is the meaning of asava? Asava is a Pali word which literally means outflow. And I would translate the word asava as uncontrolled mental outflows. That means those outflows of the mind which we are unable to control. For example, anger, emotions. And normally asavas are defined as a few things in the suttas: ignorance, views, sensual desire, being. So basically, it is uncontrolled outflows, the flowing of the mind that we are unable to control. So in a way, some defilements. And when we are able to control the outflows, when a person becomes an arahant, he has destroyed the outflows. The mind does not flow. He does not have these uncontrolled outflows. He has total control over the mind. And eventually, when he passes into Nibbana, even the six consciousness will cease and will stop. That's why in our Theravada teachings an arahant has finished the work. Whereas in the Mahayana teachings they say that an arahant has not finished the work and will be reborn again to become a bodhisattva, a bodhisattva, and finally become a Buddha. But in our Theravada suttas, there were 2 or 3 suttas where an arahant has passed away. Then the Buddha came to visit to see the body of the arahant. And then when he was looking at the body of the arahant, the corpse of the arahant, he saw in the distance a black cloud flying to and fro. So the Buddha told his disciples, he looked at in the distance, do you see a black cloud flying to and fro? And they said yes. And the Buddha said, that is Mara, Satan, looking for the consciousness of the arahant. And trying to find out where the arahant took rebirth. But the Buddha said he can never find the consciousness of the arahant because the consciousness of the arahant has ceased, has stopped. The arahant is not reborn. There is another interesting episode in the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, about an external ascetic. He had a certain kung fu, he had a certain skill, where he could take the skull of a dead man, take the skull of a dead man and knock a few times, and he can tell where the man took rebirth. He can tell exactly where that person took rebirth. So one day he came to visit the Buddha, and the Buddha knows about his reputation. So the Buddha presented him with a skull and asked him to try his skill. So he took the skull, knock. They were surprised. He cannot tell where this person took rebirth. Then he couldn't believe himself and knocked again. Still he couldn't tell. And the Buddha told him, because you can't tell, because this is a skull of an arahant, has not taken rebirth. So you can see in our Theravada suttas, it's very clear that an arahant has finished his work. There are some written questions here. In the suttas, what are the warnings the Buddha had given for the future? There are some warnings. One is, I think I've mentioned before, that even though a monk can be very famous and very learned and very senior and world-renowned, with a large following of monk and lay disciples, and yet that monk can have wrong view. So the Buddha is saying we should not rely on any particular monk, but on the suttas for guidance. We should take refuge only in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and that basically means to take refuge in the discourses of the Buddha. There are few other warnings. For example, the Buddha said that in the future, monks may neglect the secluded life. They might neglect the secluded life and not practice the aim of the holy life, which is to get out of samsara. And the Buddha advised that monks should be careful of this and make it a point to live in secluded places and practice to end suffering. Another one, the Buddha also warned that it is dangerous for monks to live together with nuns or women. And the Buddha said that it is best for monks to live either alone or in communities of other monks. Sometimes that can be quite difficult. For example, at first the Buddha did not want nuns to ordain, and did not want women to renounce. But even then he had no choice. When the mother wanted to ordain, the mother pleaded with him 3 times. He refused to ordain the mother. Later, when Ananda saw the Buddha's mother, the foster mother, crying, so he pleaded on behalf of Mahathera, Buddha's foster mother, the one who actually looked after him. And still the Buddha refused, even after 3 times. But later, whenever Ananda thought and said that he owed a lot to the mother, and this was not an ordinary woman. This was a woman who brought him up, who nursed him, who gave him milk, etc. So the Buddha had no choice, and he allowed women to go forth. So in the same way, even though ideally monks should not live in a community with other women, sometimes, like in Malaysia, women also want to practice, and it's very difficult. You start a monastery not to allow women to practice, especially if a lot of support comes from the women. So the best thing to do is perhaps to have a monastery where men and women can practice. But if we are able to, maybe we can start some other hermitage where monks can live alone, other hermitages, small hermitages where monks can live alone. Of course it is best if a monk is very sincere in his practice to live alone, because living alone is the best condition and you don't have somebody to talk to. Of course it's not easy to live alone. Not all monks are ready to live alone. And concerning warnings, a few other warnings. There's a few warnings in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of the Fives. Now the next question. The Buddha mentioned that one experiences utter purity of mindfulness and equanimity in the 4th jhana. Does this imply that the perfection of mindfulness can only be attained in the 4th jhana? Yes, because perfection of utter purity of mindfulness is obtained in the 4th jhana. Although in the suttas it is mentioned that there are some people due to certain conditions, what we could call paramis, even with the 1st jhana, it is possible for them to become an arahant. But generally this is not true. Generally this is not true, because in the suttas, the Buddha says when a person attains the 4th jhana, then he can understand very clearly all the elements. He can see very, very clearly. Now, in one of the Majjhima Nikaya suttas, the Buddha said that Satipatthana is a characteristic mark of Samadhi. And Samadhi in the suttas, there's always only 2 definitions of perfect Samadhi in the suttas of Samadhi. One is 4 jhanas, the other one is one pointedness of mind. If a person can attain one pointedness of mind, meaning any jhana, then that person automatically has Satipatthana, because Satipatthana is a characteristic mark of Samadhi. Satipatthana, that's why I like to translate Satipatthana as an intense state of mindfulness. When a person enters jhana, the mind is focused very sharp, very mindful. It's very intense mindfulness. The person's mindfulness is not intense enough. That person may fall into a sleep state because, for example, we are watching the breath going in and out. As the breath becomes finer and finer and finer, it is hardly perceptible. It's hardly perceptible, hard to observe the breath. And when that happens, it's as though for a while you have no object. When you have no object, it's like you are about to go to sleep. When you are about to go to sleep, you must clear your mind of all thinking, isn't it? If you have any thinking in your mind, you'll have insomnia. Tak boleh tidur because something is bothering you, something is disturbing you, something is on your mind. So you have to clear your mind before you can fall asleep. So when your mindfulness of the breath becomes so fine that hardly you are able to perceive the breathing, then it's a state very similar to the state just before sleep. So if your mindfulness is not intense enough, you slip into a sleep state. And some people think that is jhana. And some people, when they come out of it, they think they have attained sotapanna or one of the Aryan stages. But jhana is not like that. Jhana, you have to be very intensely mindful before you can glide and slip into the jhana state. So, this is, if yes, then mindfulness and jhanas must be interrelated closely and cannot be separated. That is exactly true because I did mention just now that satipatthana, intense state of mindfulness, is a characteristic mark of jhana samadhi. Then one can say that there will be no right mindfulness without the jhanas, and no jhanas without right mindfulness. Is this statement correct? Excuse me while I stop the change of theory. Then one can say that there will be no right mindfulness without the jhanas, and no jhanas without right mindfulness. Is this statement true? Not exactly true, because when satipatthana, even if you have not attained jhana, you can still practice in state of mindfulness. You can practice satipatthana, but you have to make an effort. You have to make an effort to be intensely mindful. But if you keep up that effort, then it leads you into jhana. Because the Buddha said in the suttas, the Aryan Eightfold Path must be practiced one by one. You must first get right view. And right view, if you practice it slowly, it will lead you into right thoughts. And right thoughts will lead you to the third one, right speech. And right speech will lead you to the fourth one, right action, etc. So when you practice right mindfulness, and you keep it up, it must lead you into right concentration. So somebody, even though he has not attained right concentration, yet he, with some effort, he can maintain the right mindfulness. But after he attains the jhana, then right mindfulness comes more easily. It can be more automatic. It keeps up his concentration. Another question. Must the correct practice of right mindfulness always lead to the attainment of jhana? Yes, because as I said just now, the seventh factor, right mindfulness, if you practice it correctly, it must lead you to the eighth factor of the Aryan Eightfold Path, which is right concentration. In a ghostly existence, how is it when one does dana and radiate or transfer knowledge to them, they can receive it, but not in other states of existence, example hell? I think I mentioned before that although the Buddha did not explain it, But I personally believe the reason is because they know. If they don't know, how can they receive? Right? You must know something to receive, because this reception of the merits is also something that is mental. It's just like happiness. You do something good and you know you have done something good. The knowledge that you have done something good gives you happiness. But the knowledge that you have done something evil gives you remorse, suffering. So there must be knowing. So when a person is reborn as a ghost, that person goes here and goes there and he's unable to get food, he's unable to get clothes to wear, then that person will think of the relatives, that the relatives are the only people who would be willing to help. So they come around their relatives. That's why ghosts like to live near human beings. So we see ghosts and sometimes we dream of ghosts. And if you dream of a ghost in a difficult situation, then it is probable that the ghost is trying to ask you to help. So it is best to go and do some dharma and transfer the merit to all beings so that they receive. But besides ghosts, any being that is nearby, if it knows and it wants to receive, it comes near, it can receive. For example, the Buddha said, when you do charity, you think of the house spirit, the house deity, the house spirit and the family that lives in your house, the Dato, the powerful Deva that lives near your house, and all the spirits nearby, so that if they want to achieve, to receive the share of the merits, when you transfer the merit, they come. So they rejoice with you. That's why we say Anumodana, rejoice with them. So they are happy when they think, you think of them. That's why the Buddha said, whenever you do any good deed, you think of all beings so that they are happy with us and they try to protect us also. But in a being in hell won't know that you are trying to offer him this share the merit with him, so he probably for that reason cannot receive. Did the Buddha predict the future lifespan of the human beings? If yes, please elaborate. Yes, in one of the suttas, the Buddha said that human lifespan can vary from 80,000 years on the average down to 10 years. When the average human lifespan is very long, like 80,000 years, life on earth is very good. It's almost like a heavenly existence, and people are good, people are virtuous. But later, because of defilements, because of greed, hatred and delusion, they don't keep the precepts. And when that happens, the conditions change. Conditions change, and conditions on earth also change for the worse. And then the lifespan gets shorter and shorter and shorter. You can go down to 10 years, and when the lifespan of people are 10 years, there will be a lot of killing. When a woman is 5 years old, she can give birth already. But people don't live long. On the average, by the time they're 10 years old, they die. So there's so much killing that some people will get scared, and this group of people will run into the forest to run away from other people, so to escape the slaughter. Then when they run away, then they start to think. We hear last time our our ancestors had long lifespan. Why is it now we only live up to 10 years? So they think it must be because we don't keep the precepts. So they start to keep the precepts. They don't kill, they don't steal, etc. And slowly their lifespan increases. 10 years and increases. It can go up to 80,000 years again. So when the lifespan goes up to 80,000 years again, then Maitreya Buddha or Maitreya Buddha, will come. So all these was predicted by the Buddha. Did the Buddha say anything about the end of the world? Oh yes, the Buddha said about the end of the world. The Buddha said, now, in fact the Buddha has said several things that only now science is beginning to confirm. The Buddha said that now we have one sun in our solar system. By the way, one world system consists of one sun, one sun and one Mount Simeru and 4 oceans around it. This Mount Simeru, even though it's spoken by the Buddha, we don't see it. Maybe it is because it is like an astral form, a very fine form, just like spirits. Even though spirits exist, we don't see it. So maybe Mount Simeru is also like that. Anyway, the Buddha says, when the world is about to be destroyed, then a second sun appears, second sun comes into our system. And when the second sun comes, then our earth gets heated up. It's heated up, the plants will die, a lot of living beings will die. And then after that the streams also will start to dry up. And then after a long time, a third sun will appear. And this third sun, like the second sun, will come nearer and nearer and nearer. And as it comes nearer and nearer, the earth will get more heated up, and rivers will dry, the ponds will dry, the lakes will shrink. And after a long time, the fourth sun will come nearer and nearer and nearer. And when that happens, the rivers dry up, the lakes dry up, and even the big rivers dry up, and the ocean starts to become shallower. And after a long time, the fifth sun will appear and come nearer and nearer. And then the sixth sun, when the sixth sun appears, the world becomes heated up. It starts to smoke already, and all the oceans will dry up. And when the seventh sun appears, then the world will burst into flames. And it will be consumed totally. The whole world will be consumed totally. Now this is very interesting. How do you get a second sun and a third sun and a fourth sun, etc. You might think it is not consistent with science. Actually, it is not so. It is very consistent with science, because in the sutras, the Buddha also talked about the world systems expanding and contracting. Last time we didn't know about this. Now only we realize science actually is just beginning to discover this. How scientists, when they look into the stars at night, now they begin to realize that the stars around us are moving away from each other. In other words, the galaxy is expanding. The stars are moving away and moving away. But now, the scientists, they still don't know what is going to happen. So they have various theories. Some of them think that the expansion of the stars, the movement of the stars will stop. And some think that will go on indefinitely. But the Buddha says it will come to a certain limit. This expansion of the world will come to a certain limit. After that it will contract. So what does it mean by contracting? That means the stars come nearer. Stars, the suns and stars are basically suns. So these suns come nearer and nearer and nearer and nearer. So that is how, after a long time, a second sun comes into our system, and after a while, a third sun. So they come nearer and nearer and nearer. So finally, it will burn and come together, and perhaps form a huge mass, what they call black hole. Now in science term, they talk about black hole. The solid mass of substance are so dense and so huge that the magnetic pull is so strong. Actually, it is bright, it is not dark. It emits light, but this light that it emits, as soon as the light particles come out, they are pulled back. Because it is so dense, the magnetic pull is very strong. So the light particles go out and come back again. So because the light particles, photons cannot go out, so you can't see this solid mass of substance, so they call it black hole. So we see what Buddha said about the end of the world, it's very possible. There are other things the Buddha said that only recently science has confirmed. For example, the Buddha said in the Sutta, even just now the one I read, that the world has no beginning and no end. Time actually has no beginning and time has no end. Many years ago, this was not conceivable because an ordinary mind, the mind of an ordinary person, a Putujana, would think that time had a beginning. And because time has a beginning, they think that time has an end. So they think that because time has a beginning, the world had a beginning, so therefore there must be a creator God. This concept of the creator God comes about because of the concept that the world had a beginning, had a creator. But when the world has no beginning, time has no beginning, then the concept of a creator God does not apply more relevant. So this is some of the things. Another thing the Buddha said, which has recently been confirmed by Professor Stephen Hawking, is that space is boundless. Space is boundless. That is another thing which is mind-boggling, hard to conceive. How space can have no end. You keep on flying and flying and flying and flying. You can never find the boundary of space. So, now concerning this, the Buddha has said one other thing, that science don't even have a clue yet. And what is that thing? Namely, the Buddha said consciousness, knowing, can be developed so that consciousness becomes boundless, consciousness becomes infinite, so that somebody like the Buddha who has developed his consciousness and what is happening in another world system, if he wants to know, he can know. There's another thing that the Buddha said about the galaxy. He called it the Chakrawala. Chakra is a disc, right? Chakra is a disc, Malay word for disc. It comes from the Sanskrit word chakra. Now they realize that the galaxy is flat like a disc, right? Whereas 2,500 years ago, the Buddha already said about this chakra. There are things that the Buddha has said that science slowly is beginning to realize. For example, the Buddha talked about ghosts. Ghosts exist, spirits exist, spirits that live in the trees, that live in the plants, that live in the rivers, in the clouds, in the earth, in the rocks, etc. Now, there are certain societies, like the Society for Psychical Research in England, they do research on these psychic things, and they are beginning to realize that there are certain things like ghosts, and they even be able to record conversation with ghosts, and if you take the trouble to inquire, I think you can find out.
Do these 5 aggregates arise together and cease together? Or
yes.
one by one?
I think they arise together because just now the Sutta we read, the Buddha said, you cannot find consciousness without body, feeling, perception, volition. Actually, some of these things we have to go by the Sutta because sometimes you may find, if you read other books like the Abhidhamma, sometimes there may be some contradiction with the Sutta. So it's best to stick to the Sutta, because the Sutta we all acknowledge is the words of the Buddha, whereas the Abhidhamma, some monks think that it is the words of the Buddha, some monks think that it is not the words of the Buddha, so it is a bit controversial. Whereas Suttas, the earliest 4 Nikayas, everybody agrees that is the Buddha's words. I hope you have understood a bit more of the 5 aggregates of attachment, that they are impermanent, that they be attached to this body and this mind, whether your own body or your relatives, those that you love. We must always remember that even though we love those around us, one day either they separate from us or we have to separate from them. So we keep this always in mind, the thought of impermanence, the thought that one day we must die, then we become very realistic, and we accept things as they are, and we prepare for it, and that will reduce our suffering very, very much.